prefer this to be as it is in progress. Just as informal as possible. So and hopefully I'll get to know you guys a bit better as well, which is always nice. I always like meeting new people. So before we get started, we'll just do a quick Mangala Charan and then we'll crack on. Does that sound good? Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, great. So good. So before we also get started and dive into this topic as well, if you do feel comfortable, I know it's early morning for you guys. Please do turn on your cameras. It's always nice to see your faces and whether I'm boring you or not. So feel free to do that. I see Pulkit. I can see Pulkit. Ananda, is this Pulkit?
Yeah.
Pulkit, I want to see you, man. It's been a long time. But we'll get started. And again, if you guys have any questions, please do flag them up. So Ananda, could you just present the slides, please? Okay, awesome. Thank you, Ananda. So what we're going to be talking about today is thriving in one's nature, right? And what is the spiritual understanding of this from the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam as well? And why do we need to know this? So first of all, to start off, I'm just going to ask you guys a couple of questions. And if you want to reply to it, just pop a little emoji up or whack it in the chat. My first question to all of you is, how many of you have felt, I'm assuming some of you are studying, some of you might be working, how many of you have felt that in certain activities in life, be that at school, at college, university, or working, you felt you'd had to put in 10 times the effort than a peer just to get the same result? Yeah, Ananda? Who else feels like that? Harsha, Nitalam, yeah, Dula, Hari. You guys feel like that, right? A lot of people feel like that. Quite a natural feeling, right? Jessica, I can see you crying. Is that laughing? Sorry. I'm assuming that means it's quite an evident thing. Sometimes we do find ourselves in situations where our peers, things are coming so naturally to them, where we are having to work 10 times as hard just to receive the same result, right? For me, it was when I was doing my degree. Malvika mentioned I was studying Motorsport Engineering, and some of my friends were just so mathematically attuned, they were able to understand maths concepts, scientific concepts a lot quicker than I was. For me, I like to take it steady, really like to understand each of the details. It takes me like 5 hours where they just get it in 30 minutes, right? And it can feel a bit disheartening at times, right? How many of you have felt a bit disheartening? Like, oh my God, why can't I understand things as quick as someone else can, right? Especially those of you who are, quite academic and quite competitive. You feel like you're lagging behind, but you don't know what to do. Like, why is someone else's ability to understand a concept much better than me, right? So it's quite a common feeling among us. Thanks for replying to that. Just keep on that slide. Yeah, that's fine. How many have felt as if, and take this as you want, and translate this as you want. How many of you have felt as if you found your quote unquote calling in life? Okay, and if you have, that's great. Gaurangi, thank you for doing that. Ananda, Hari, brilliant. Okay, a couple of you have. That's fantastic. And can I ask you, would you mind me asking you what that is for yourselves? Maybe Gaurangi, would you like to say?
Sure. For me, it was teaching. I think that's what I love to do, being with children, being able to teach them. and I do it with little ones, like in early childhood education, and then I pursue that later on to teach to older, so like in elementary and high school. So for me, I think I've made it. Like I love what I do, so that's mine.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna hold that example of yours because you've touched on a few things there that I might ask back to you in a second, because that's a really, really good example, if that's okay. If you're comfortable with that. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Who else is it? Hurry. You found your calling, right?
I think. I'm not sure, but I think. Mine is also actually working with children, but more in the health field, particularly, hopefully, in music and medicine, combining that with children.
Wow, that's nice. That's interesting.
Still trying to figure it out.
My sister does something similar, actually, but that's cool. So you have an idea, you've got like a scope, right? You feel like, I definitely want to do this. I'm not sure yet how, but I want to do it, which is a brilliant start, actually, really, really good start. So good. And if some of you don't know that and don't understand, it's completely fine also. Yeah, and it's not your fault. And we'll go into why that is, why society at the moment presents certain challenges and stops us from pursuing our Dharma, finding our Dharma once, and second is actually pursuing it in confidence. Yeah, and we'll discuss why that is in a second. Good. And I guess the rest of you feel as if you're very lost and you have no idea what you're supposed to be feeling, right? Put your hand up if you feel like that. Yeah, Vishaka, I got 2 hands there. That was enthusiastic. Yeah, fine. Bunch of everyone else, right? And that's completely fine, right? Because, and why do you think that is? Why do you think they just get a quick answer? Vishaka, maybe yourself. Why do you think you feel a bit lost and you're not so sure about what you're supposed to be doing? What do you think stopped you?
I don't know. I'm a university student right now. And I don't know. I feel like it's because there's a lot of things that I want to do, but they're not necessarily like, I don't know how to explain it, but they're not necessarily like on a practical level, meaning like, is this something like that you can make money out of it, just given like the society in which like we live in. So yeah, there's just like a lot of things that are like conflicting, but I do want to do like a lot of things also. But so yeah, maybe like that's why like I don't know like exactly like, what am I supposed to do. So
sure. So you want to do lots of different things, but you're not sure where to start or where it's going to take you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, again, I don't know if it's the same in Canada and America, but in England, people study certain subjects at university and then they're going to jobs which are wildly different from the subjects they studied, right? Like I work with people in business, but I work with people with the craziest degrees and just no career ever matches up, right? And so therefore you're not really expected to know, because I think it's the same in where you guys are as well. But here you're sort of, at the age of 16, you need to figure out what career you want to go into, because at 16, you have to choose certain subjects to get you into university, right? What 16-year-old knows or has really questioned their calling or purpose in life and what direction they want to go to? Yeah, they haven't even figured out whether spiritual life is for them, let alone material life, right? Spirituality is a whole different question, but our material direction is also important, right? And it's very difficult at a young age. And then another question I'm going to ask is, there's so much hype, right? Online, on YouTube, all these adverts are all about like, oh, you need to find your passion. You've got to find your nature. You've got to release your inner beast. All you've seen these adverts, right? And how many of you think this is just a bit of a hype? It's a bit overplayed. And this is just a bit of a money-making scheme? Because some of it is. Yeah. Yeah, fine. So a couple of us, yeah. Brilliant. And before we just carry on, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a stat. So the field I work in is I look at like people's psychology, working patterns, and how they shift within different types of career and why they do that, and the future of why people are doing that. So it's also said that a statistic a couple of years ago said 43% of millennials, some of us may be millennials here, some of us may be younger or older, 43% plan to leave their current job within 2 years. Only 28 plan to stay beyond the 5 years. The reason being that majority, almost 50%, because they feel disengaged. They're not sure that this is where they're supposed to be. And it's not necessarily giving them a level of inner fulfillment, which is a particular quality a lot of people now have the luxury of actually figuring out. Like, for example, if you look at older generations, like generations your parents' generation, maybe your parents' parents' generation, when they moved to Canada, it was about survival. They did what they had to do in order to set a foundation up so that their kids could have a stable, a stable life and opportunity. The same in the UK. But right now, we're dealing with a generation where that stability is fine. There's enough opportunity. So now we start to hyphen and question, where is my focus? Why am I not getting some level of inner satisfaction? Because the need for survival is kind of gone now, right? It's safe to say, in the majority's case. So therefore, these questions are actually very important. And the reason is, why are we talking about this topic, and what has it got to do with Krishna consciousness? What has it got to do with our spirituality? The fact is, and I'm a big advocate of this, is Krishna consciousness is difficult as it is to practice in today's world. This world is very completely against the grain of Krishna consciousness, and therefore Krishna consciousness, to practice it on its own, is actually very difficult. And therefore what we should think about is, how can I set myself up for success? How can I set up my material life, my job, my career, my situation, so that I feel enthused, happy, settled, so that I can practice my spiritual life in peace? There are certain things we can control in our material lives so that it can make for more of an easy situation in order to practice our spiritual life, right? It's not that, whatever material situation I'm given, I won't do anything to change it, and I'll just try extra hard to chant better rounds and to get up in the morning and to practice my spiritual life, right? It's not that, I work as an accountant and I completely hate it, but it's okay because this is what Krishna's given me, and therefore I'm going to do that, but my spiritual life is very difficult, but that's fine, that's my austerity. No, there is certain aspects of your life you can change so that your spiritual life is better and you can focus on quality spiritual life as opposed to just forcing it upon yourself. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? Good. Okay. So that's essentially why this topic is very important, and it's actually based on spiritual principle. So Nanda, if you could just go to the next slide. Cool. So just two quick questions, and I won't tell you guys to share it, but you can just think about it as we sort of go through the talk today, is finding what your element is. And I want you to think about this in your life. And if you don't have an idea, that's completely fine also. I want you to ask yourself two questions. One is, reflect on a time where you felt you were in your element and you were just thriving. You were happy, you were enthused in the activity. You didn't want to stop doing it. You felt enthused afterwards. What were you doing? How did you feel after? And what was the feedback from others? Yeah, what was the feedback from others? And I'm going to ask one question to Gorangi, if I may ask.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback do you get from people when you teach kids? How do they respond back to you afterwards, or how do other teachers respond back to you?
There was one teacher, he actually thanked me because I was taking care of his students, because as an English teacher, they come with me for like an hour. So towards the end, the teacher came, he's like, you did a really good job with them. Like, they spent pretty much their day talking about you. And he thanked me for taking care of them and helping them, which was pretty humbling of an experience, like very humbling. Because like as like a specialist, I'm only with them for like an hour per week, and I have like multiple groups. So a lot of times their teachers, they'll come and they'll be like, you did, and I was only an intern back then. So the teachers would thank me, the students would, they're like, you taught us more English than we learned with their actual teacher. Mm-hmm. Which for me, I was just like, oh wow. So it's a very gratifying career. What I have, I'm very happy that I have that, and these kind of feedback, it helps me like to continue to like actually thrive in that.
And you said it was quite a humbling experience because you probably felt as if you weren't doing anything exceptionally amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a classic example of a result of one who is acting in their dharma. Yeah, and I'll share that why in a second. Okay, but thanks for saying that. So Ananda, if you just go to the next slide. In the normal world, there are so many examples or models or systems that people use to find their calling, find their purpose. One of them is Ikigai, which I find to be quite useful actually, as a model to use and ask yourself to figure out like your kind of purpose. Now, what I'm going to say is Dharma and these personality models are very different, okay? These personality models focus a lot on a very surface level of activity. It's more about an activity as opposed to an environment and a situation and a motive. Dharma has many different dimensions to it that you need to ask yourself in order for it to qualify as your Dharma. And I'll explain that in a second. But just to cover the surface level, there's something called Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept, which essentially means a reason for being. And essentially to find your Ikigai, you need to match something that you love and something that you're good at, something that the world needs to fulfill that element of service to others, and also something you can get paid for because you need to maintain yourself, right? And a sense of livelihood. So if you can match all of those four things, you get your Ikigai. If something is missing in the four corners, you can see that's what you feel. So for example, it's something that you love and something that you're good at. That's your essentially what they call your passion, which is satisfaction, but a feeling of uselessness because you can't use it to maintain yourself and you can't use it to actually serve the world. Yeah. If it's something you love and the world needs, great, delight for fullness, but no wealth, and you're probably not that good about it. So therefore your ego kind of gets a hit all the time because you don't feel the sense of accomplishment. And 3 and 4 are there also, which you can read. And I'll share these slides with you guys afterwards if you want to have a look at this model. But and this is just like one of the models out of hundreds of other models you can use to figure out or try to just hone in on what it could be when you ask yourselves, right? And I'm going to take you through a bit of an exercise to figure that out. And on the next slide. So one quote that I really love, and this is a trap that everyone finds themselves in today's world. And a part of finding your Dharma, you have to unlearn a couple of things. And you have to re-engineer a process of thought that a lot of us have been conditioned into thinking just due to the way the world and society is set up. So this is a quote by Einstein. I'm sure some of you have seen it before. It's a very famous quote. And it says, everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Yeah. This is so funny because Einstein said this in bygone years and it's still so applicable today because constantly due to the competitive world that we live in and the lack of understanding of Dharma and appreciation for the diversity of potential, we end up judging ourselves and also judging others relative to what we see as a majority of success, a picture of success. And therefore we judge everyone on that success parameter. And if no one's hitting that, you're dumb. You're not a genius, which isn't the case. Yeah, which isn't the case at all. And that's why it's so important for us to find our Dharma, be confident in it. Next slide. So from the Bhagavatam, I just want to share with you guys a pastime which illustrates what Dharma is and the effects of being in your Dharma. Okay. So in the Bhagavatam, there's the famous pastime of Gajendra. This is in Canto 8. And Gajendra is an elephant. And so Gajendra was with his wife elephant, with his kid elephant. And they were on a hot summer's day. They were going to the watering hole to drink some water to cool themselves down. And Gajendra is obviously a big, strong elephant. Yeah, massive. Elephants are actually very dangerous, very cute creatures, but also very, very dangerous creatures. Any of you who've encountered an elephant would know. And so Gajendra is taking his wife and his kid to the watering pond. And before he lets his wife and his kid drink, as the man of the household, he tests the water out. He approaches the watering hole and he puts his foot in to test it's okay and clear. What he doesn't realize is there's a crocodile in that watering hole. A crocodile who is a lot smaller than Gajendra, not as strong as Gajendra, yeah, not as big as Gajendra, and is only one person. Whereas Gajendra has got his wife who's a similar size and his kid is maybe a bit smaller, but probably still the same size as the croc. But the croc on his own sees, hungry afternoon, croc wants a snack, sees Gajendra's foot, goes for the foot, holds it. Sorry, this picture's its trunk, but I couldn't find so this is the best you're going to get. The croc bites the foot, and then they end up wrestling and fighting in the water. Yeah, the croc has pulled Gajendra into the water. They're fighting, and it said that this fight went on for ages. It was a constant battle. And during this battle, Prabhupada mentions there are 3 things that increased in the crocodile, and those same 3 things decreased in Gajendra. Yeah. So it said that the crocodile, its mental ability or its enthusiasm increased, its physical strength increased, and its sensual power increased. And what I mean by sensual power is its level of awareness increased. But in the elephant, this all decreased. Now, the question is, why do you think that? When the elephant is so much bigger, so much stronger, and had the wife and the baby elephant with him, could have easily crushed the crocodile. Why do you think that the elephant was weakened by the situation and the croc only gained strength in all those 3 areas? Why do you guys think? Any ideas? I would think beyond just the animals that they are. Any thoughts? Pranshu, I can see you're in deep meditation about this story.
I'm thinking like losing hope, or like the power to continue, like that willpower to actually like continue, like exhaustion. If you consider like the personality, he was just getting tired, like mentally. Like if you're like what you said, right? Like it increased in one, decreased in the other. So like his like his will to continue just like decreased. So he's like, why should I continue? So it was like losing hope, losing like that grip of like I should probably pursue, like continue that.
But why was he losing hope? Why do you think he was losing hope? What in the situation is going against the crocodile? What kind of animal is a crocodile? What kind of animal is an elephant? Pulkit says environment. Yeah. So what kind of animal is an elephant? It's a mammal, right? It's a land animal. Whereas a crocodile is an amphibian. Sorry, not amphibian. It's a reptile that generally thrives in the water. It can swim very quick. On land, crocodiles, they're quick, but they're not the quickest, right? So what this story is exemplifying is the ability of the crocodile in its dharma and the inability of the elephant out of its dharma. If this fight was on land, it may be a completely different situation. But because it was brought to water within the dharma or the environment of the crocodile gained in enthusiasm, physical strength, and also sensual power, and therefore was able to dominate a very strong force. Whereas the elephant was completely destroyed by the situation because it was out of its dharma. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah? So this is actually a very, very powerful situation of dharma, because it shows dharma is not just about activity, but it's about environment you choose for yourself. It's about the people you surround yourselves in. It's about the situation you ultimately holistically create when you perform a particular activity. When all of those are in line, and when you've figured it out to that level of detail, you can thrive and you stop having to survive in a situation. We talk about, how are you, Prabhu, Mataji? Oh, I'm surviving. Now, let's stop surviving. Let's figure out the situation we can actually start to thrive in and be very progressive in our material activities, which will only in turn feed our spiritual activities. We'll have a lot more enthusiasm for them as well. Yeah. So that's just a very interesting example Prabhupada explains that's told in the Bhagavatam about the power and need of Dharma. It's a very famous example, and I encourage you guys to read those purports, because Prabhupada goes into a lot more detail about Dharma there, and it's really, really interesting. So an example of this in my personal life was, so I'm really into martial arts, has been as a kid. And when I was about 13, 14, something like that, I was doing karate, and my instructor told me to attack this black belt. Right? This black belt was there. He was all right, and I was attacking him, but he was blocking me. And we were doing that. I was like, fine, we're practicing. And so I went to attack him. He blocked me, but I fell over. And I tried it again and I fell over again. And my instructor saw and he said, I said to him, why am I falling over? I'm the one attacking this guy. Surely he should be falling over, right? And my instructor said, well, it's because of your stance. Because your stance isn't strong. If your stance is weak, even if you're on the offense, even if you're attacking, you are going to be weak. And there's someone in defense, because they're strong, because their stance is strong, they're able to actually put you down as a result of it. And Dharma is a bit like this in our spiritual life. We need to develop a strong stance, a strong dharmic stance, so that we can be in the best position to optimize our spiritual activities. Yeah. So that we can remove any material obstacles that we have control over. Of course, there are material obstacles we can't control, and that's just life. But what we can control, if we can set that up for success, we can actually be even productive when we're being attacked. So in spiritual life, as you understand, we get attacked by Maya and the illusion and distractions every single day. If we are not dharmically stanced properly, those will affect us more. But if we're dharmically stanced properly, we're able to think with clarity of mind, with our central power increases, and our enthusiasm to overcome any distractions also increases as a result of that. Yeah. Good. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through two lists. The first list I'm going to run through is the feeling and the effects of what it's like when you're actually in your Dharma. And the second list is a list of things when you're out of your Dharma. So this is actually shared to us in the UK by His Holiness Narasimha Swami Maharaj, who's done a lot of research into Dharma and the effects of it. And when he shared this with me, I was mind blown, because I was like, I can completely relate. This makes sense. So as I read these out, I want you guys just to think about situations that you've been in, that you feel, oh yes, when I was doing that situation, I did feel like that. I did feel like that. And I was doing this and I did feel like that one that you mentioned when I was out of my Dharma. Yeah? Does that make sense? So I'm going to read out the first one. So if Nanda could just go to the next slide. Yeah. So I'll read one by one. And as I read it, just meditate on a situation, think about a situation that you felt, yes, I can completely relate to an activity like that. And I want you to write it down. So you've got it there. So you start building that dharmic picture for yourself. Okay. So in tune with your Dharma, you feel you lead a meaningful life that totally satisfies you. You do not just do well in an activity, but you can't imagine not doing it. Mostly people and circumstances come into your life effortlessly and help you move forward. Really, really important one there. People see you thriving and effortlessly they come to help at your aid to support. Your gifts and talents come to your aid so that you have the strength to easily accomplish your work. Next one, very, very important one. You take wise risks and remain confident because you know you will be protected by Dharma. i.e., you're happy to take bigger and bigger challenges in this activity or dharmic situation because you know your innate ability will protect you. And the final one, you're generally in good health. And if illness does come, you can deal with it fairly easily. Yeah. So whatever thoughts are coming into your mind, just make a little list, jot those activities down or those situations, and that's just for yourselves. You don't have to share it. Yeah. If you just go to the next list, what it feels like to be out of your Dharma. Okay. First one, you wonder if what you do has any meaning, or you are hardly ever satisfied with the results. And you are hardly ever satisfied with the results, sorry. You're not sure if you should be doing what you're doing at all. Most of what you do, it just feels like a struggle. you seem to accomplish everything only with great effort, and it never seems good enough. Most of the time, you are afraid that disaster will strike. You have a sense of fear about it. Yeah. And the final one, you constantly get ill. You don't know what's wrong or even how to get well. And so just note down anything in those two categories. And that's just for you guys, obviously, to share. Was that useful? Did that ring any bells with anyone? Yeah, Gaurang, a couple of nods. Yep, Ananda. Anyone else? Madhumita, thanks for joining. How was that for you? You can just put a thumbs up or thumbs down. Thumbs up, great. Okay, good, perfect. All right. So next slide, Ananda, if possible. So this is something that I've used myself, and I thought just to make the session a bit practical, I want you guys to have a look at it as well. And for me, there was one trip, I was in India, I was in Mayapur, and I was traveling back to the UK. And I thought, I needed to figure out what am I supposed to be doing in life and what direction am I supposed to take. So I took this model here and I wrote down a list. I just wrote down a list in all these 4 quadrants, and I added to it as I sort of started to experiment with more activities. And this gave me a good map of my activities and where my dharmic activity could possibly be located in. So just to run through this really quickly, and again, Ananda, you can send this to everyone and everyone can maybe print it out and you can use it as a template. So top left is activities, and not just activities, but situations, environments, whatever it may be, things that you are good at and you love doing at the same time. This essentially illustrates the direction you should push your activities in, okay? Or the majority at least. Top right is things you're not good at, but you're eager to develop, right? Things you're not good at, but you're eager to develop. For me, Microsoft Excel. Yeah, I'm not essentially very good at it. It's needed for my job. Vishaka, you relate to that? Yeah, Excel.
Yeah, but, I like everything that, everything that's like, I know the basics of like when it comes to computer. So yes, I 100% relate. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm happy to develop it. Let's try and learn. I'm okay for that. Bottom left is things you're good at, but you dislike doing. Yeah. This is a classic one when it comes to temple service. If you guys have been to a temple and you're really good at something, you do it really well, and someone says, oh, you're really good at that, you should do it. And then they just put you in that service for ages and you just hate it, right? You just hate it months after months. We've all been in that trap. But these things, yeah, we can do and we're good at it. We don't necessarily know why, but we don't like them, but it makes us sort of dissatisfied, right? Because it doesn't fulfill an inner calling. And the bottom right is things you're not good at and things you don't like doing. And these things just make us depressed and we should try and minimize them. Yeah? Now, I will qualify this because what I'm about to go into next is Varnashram, so the Vedic categories of Dharma, and how we can identify that and what that means for us. But what I want to qualify and say is we have to understand life is not perfect. Okay, this world will never be perfect. We will never find perfect situations. There will always be some challenging elements. The reason is because the world is not geared and it's not organized in a way where they kind of ask you, oh, let's pick someone, Nitilam, sorry. I want to make sure that you're doing a job that you love doing and you're good at and you feel completely fulfilled, and we'll just put you in that job and that's it, done. And oh, you don't like doing Excel? No problem, we'll remove Excel from your job. No company thinks like that because the world is set up for profit and gain. Therefore, do you bring value? Can you make me profit? Okay, employment. Because the world is not understanding the value of Dharma. Yeah. So therefore, in the world today, we have to try and get as close to 100% as possible. But 100%, I don't think I've ever seen a situation which is 100% perfect. But part of material world is a struggle, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be trying to get out. So therefore, I don't want to also invite a sense of like a dream state in your mind that this is perfect world of Dharma out there. It's not. but we can utilize it to put us in the best position possible. Okay, great. So take a little snapshot of that if you want to take a photo, or this will be circulated afterwards. Great exercise to do. Add to it as you start to do certain things. Reflect on how you felt before, how you felt during the activity, how you felt after the activity. And then that will give you a lot more direction. And things may change as time goes on, and that's completely fine because you just start to learn more about yourselves. Right, on to the main course. Next slide, please, Ananda. So I'm sure many of you have heard these various Varnashram categories. But what I want to do is I'm going to break these down in a lot more detail. And as I do, I want you guys to think about which one you might predominate in. Which one of these things you feel that's probably the majority. You might have a clear idea, you might not. We're all a mix of each of them. But the Vedas give these four, they're known as castes or varnas. And these are actually very, very profound, because the effects of when we identify which one we predominate in, or which two we're maybe a majority mix of, they come with a certain environmental benefits, and I'll explain that in a second. So on the top, in an ideal society, in the Vedic society, you'd have the Brahmana. So Brahmana means the intellectual class, often those who guide, who teach, who educate and advise. Then you have the Kshatriya, or the administrators, the leaders, the managers. Then you have what is known as the Vaishyas, or the mercantile community, who are the business people, people who trade, tradespeople, people who profit, gain, add value, growth, these kind of topics. And then you have the Shudras, who support, follow, do the groundwork, and they do that for all the three Varnas. Yeah. Now, one thing I want to qualify is, even though this is a pyramid, it might look like a hierarchy, and it's not necessarily a hierarchy. It's not necessarily that if you're a Brahmana, you're better than a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, and a Sudra, or vice versa. Don't get into this. Don't get into that mindset, because whichever one you are, that's best for you. Like I mentioned with Gajendra and the elephant, Gajendra and the crocodile, if, like, for example, if the Brahmana tries to do a Shudra's job, they're going to fail big time, yeah, because they're out of their Dharma. And vice versa, if Sudra tries to do a Brahmana's job, which is basically the situation in today's current world and global affairs, it's a disaster, right? And so therefore, what you need to understand is, what is you, and be honest with yourself, and don't think about, I want to be this. No. What are you? Because if you're authentic with yourself, you can be authentic with Krishna. And if we want a real relationship with Krishna, we have to know who we are. And therefore we can present ourselves authentically with Krishna and have a true, honest relationship. If Krishna sees, oh, we're just lying to ourselves, then he's like, oh, well, you're just going to live a lie and just cheat yourself throughout life. What are you benefiting? Yeah. But if we find out which one we are predominant on and base our activities and things around that, we can definitely start thriving. So I'm going to break this down to you. Nanda, if you just go to the next slide, please. Okay, and just click once. Okay, so let's start with Brahmanas, okay? So as I read these out, I want you to think about, do these things relate to me, okay? So each Varna can be split into what is known as activity and motivation. So karma and guna. Karma means action, activity. Guna means mode or intention or motivation, loosely translating that, okay? And what I want you to connect with more so is the motivation, okay? Because activities will come and go and they may switch around, but I want you to think about which of the motivations and values do I closely connect with, okay? And you might find yourself, oh, well, Narasimha, I'm a bit of a mix of a couple. That's fine. We all are. We all are a mix of all of them, but we do have some predominance. And if we can identify that, it will just help us on discovering ourselves better. Sound good? Brilliant. Okay. Brahmana, intelligent class. These individuals are often those who are attracted towards the activities of, they like to learn, they're very studious naturally, They want to teach, advise, and they want to share knowledge. They want to educate. They want to give insight. Yeah. Often you'll see these people as like scientists, teachers, lecturers, consultants, guides, government advisors, that kind of role. People who do research, who are deep into research and giving knowledge, that kind of role, loosely speaking. Okay, they're just a few examples. But the Brahmana, the motivations behind the activities of a Brahmana are one, honesty. They're very truthful. And sometimes they're so truthful, it's quite blunt. You know, it's kind of like, ooh, truth hurts, right? But they're very compassionate. They're full of wisdom. They value wisdom. They're very tolerant. They have a lot of mental tolerance. They like austerity. They're happy to take on austerity in their dharma. And they also prefer peaceful situations and environments, not so much passionate environments. Okay? They favor, or they should be favoring, they may not be in there, what is known as the mode of goodness. You may have come across the modes, right? Peaceful, regulated, consistent environments. Kshatriya, administrative class. These people's activity, they're the automatic leaders, manage, administration, protect, loyal, govern. When there's a situation going, the Kshatriya is the person to fully take charge of the situation without you having to even appoint a leader. I'm sure you know those kind of situations can sometimes come across as bossy. Yeah, but that's just a particular style. But they're needed at the same time. Otherwise, who's going to lead anything, can manage anything, right? But the motivation they do it by is because they value having power and control over a situation, influencing others. They have a sense of duty and they like justice. When they see injustice, they can't stand that injustice. Control, protection, and they're driven by a mode of passion, yeah, predominantly speaking. Okay, so that's the Kshatriya for you. Vaishya. Vaishya is the mercantile community, merchants, their trades, they're money orientated, right? They're like business. And this is like basically, this is a stereotype, but it's basically 90% of Indians, right? Love doing business, love cracking the deal, you know, they'll charge you for coming to their house, like everything, right? So they're money orientated, love money, thrive around it, love accounting, love doing your taxes, that just boom, they're happy with that. But the motivations behind it are they're opportunistic. They like seeing opportunity. They look at expansion, growth, and they're also willing to do whatever they can to gain. They're very profit driven. Like, for example, like, have you ever met a friend or ever met someone who, when you just chat to them and you're just like making friends, and they're kind of like, it's like a business interview a bit, like, oh, so yeah, what do you do? So what does that do? Oh, right. And you can see they're already scheming in their mind what you can do for them. Oh, you teach. Oh, I've got business. I need teachers. We pay good. And they're making like 80% profit on you or something. So people like that, right? But they cannot help it, and it's not a bad thing because you need people like that because they're able to make trade and make business and make the economy going. Yeah. So that's Vaishyas for you. And last but not least, and a very important one, is actually the Shudras, or what is known as the laborers. So the activity is they're very happy just to support. And they're often quite creative people. They're very good at being assistants. They can be performers, artistic, happy to follow. I remember, like, I used to work in another company before I used to work for Deloitte, and my boss, she would make me like do like really small tasks, like admin tasks, which to the common person are probably like really easy. She would like say, okay, there's these 5 people. I want you to look at all their diaries and schedule in 6 meetings across the next couple of months. Oh my God, like I've never felt so enabled to do anything. When that administrative assistive task got asked, I was like dying. I was like, seems so easy, but I was so bad at it, right? Where some people are so organized, they just understand how to assist, how to support, and boom, they're in there, right? But what motivates them now is actually, I put stability there, but for some stability, for some no. What they need is stability and regulation, routine, and the need to feel cared of. They need to feel like someone's taking care of their emotional side of them. They're happy to be led. happy to support, yeah, want to do whatever it is, however small, just to help you and want to see you satisfied, or they want to see someone or something satisfied. Yeah, that's Jana Shudra. Now, it's understood in the Vedas that in Kali Yuga, the age that we live in, it's essentially said that everyone is a Shudra. Yeah, so we'll all have elements of a Shudra within us, but due to our karmic situation, we do have a predominance in the Varnas as well. Now, if you feel, some of you feel like, oh, I kind of feel like I'm a bit of two of them. Generally speaking, it would be the top two, so Brahman and Kshatriya, or Vaishya and Sudra, yeah, or Kshatriya Vaishya, sometimes speaking, yeah. You don't really get a predominance of like Brahmana Sudra because they're very opposite ends of the spectrum, yeah, or Kshatriya Shudra, definitely very difficult. Kshatriyas will have to learn how to be a good Shudra so that they can learn how to be a good leader. That's where that principle comes from. You've heard like, in order to be a good leader, you need to be a good follower, right? But that's just so you can lead properly. A Shudra doesn't learn how to be a good follower so they can be a good leader. They just learn how to be a good follower because they want to learn how to be the best follower, essentially. Okay. And yeah, again, just be mindful of the guna, the motivation, more so than the activity, because sometimes you will see that you might have like a Kshatriya, but doing the activity of a Brahmana, right? So you see people out there who, you see these guys on like online and stuff who are doing courses and stuff like that, teaching, but they're just doing it for profit and gain. Or they're teaching and sharing knowledge, but so they can lead and control a situation. Just because the activity is aligned with the Brahmana doesn't make them a Brahmana. It still makes them a Kshatriya because of the motivation behind the activity. Yeah? I'm going to pause there for a second. Any thoughts? Anyone want to share anything? Any reflections on what you felt you were when you start to think through these classes? And again, none of these are better than the other. Whatever is right for you is best. Yeah? Don't get into the illusion of thinking, oh, I want to be a Vaishya and make lots of money. Don't. Just find out what's right for you, because that ultimately will satisfy you in everything. Now, the result of acting in your Dharma is holistically you feel happy. So for example, it doesn't mean that if you're a Vaishya, you're going to make more money than the rest of the classes. No. Holistically, Dharma means that if you act in the Dharma, you will get everything you basically need, both emotionally, physically, and mentally. That can also be essentially funds, because these are the subtle benefits of what it means to be in Dharma. Because Krishna is known as Dharma Raj, the king of Dharma. Krishna governs Dharma, and Krishna is happy when one executes their Dharma, even if they're not doing it properly. 18th chapter of Gita, Krishna says, you'd rather someone perform their Dharma imperfectly than someone else's Dharma perfectly. Because when someone's within their Dharma, there's more room for holistic growth. There's more room for opportunity to progress. There's more room for people to be situated in a very balanced lifestyle, emotionally, mentally, and physically, as I've said before. And therefore, their spirituality will naturally take a knock-on effect, or they'll be better situated so they can practice Krishna consciousness. Any questions on those 4 bits before we sort of I'll just do one more few quick points, and then we'll open up for questions and things. Any thoughts? Anyone want to share anything? Hari B, how was that for you? Sorry, you have a cool name, Hari B.
Well, yeah, the last name's Bhamiripati, but it's too long in South Indian, so I just cut it off. No, it was great. I was actually talking to Malvika while you were talking about it, and when you said, Brahmana and Sudra, they're very opposing, but that's kind of where I feel like I find myself, because in terms of activity, I do feel like I'm more of a creative performer type person, but then in terms of motivation, the Brahmana class seems more apt. So yeah, that's where I was just kind of a little bit torn and confused.
No, so that's a valid point. So the reason why the Sudra element is there, because we all have a level of Sudra. So sometimes when people look at Varnashram, if they haven't really thought about their Varna properly. People often say, oh, I'm a bit of a Sudra, because I'm a bit creative, I'm a bit this. But what it may be, like I said at the beginning, is the Sudras support the other Varnas. So it may be that as a Sudra, you like to use your activities and talents to support the Brahmana class, because you align to their values and motivations also. Yeah. So there is a mix, But what I would do also, just to experiment on that, is experiment with Brahmana activities. Yeah, because that will give you a clarification. So for example, you can use creative elements to share wisdom, to show compassion, to share knowledge. Yeah. And so if you do it with the motivation of a Brahmana, but you're doing something creative, then technically your predominance is actually Brahmana. Yeah. So look at the motivation more and see which one you align to. That's why. But that's a really good question. Like, for example, myself, I love creative things. I like good design and illustration. Now, I'm not the best at it, and I don't thrive at it, right? But there are people who are so much more naturally gifted than me. But I think it's a really good tool in teaching, sharing, and showing compassion for others. Is a good tool to teach. So that combination is also there. But you're good in thinking about the motivation. Again, it's not like, oh, you figured it out. It's life is a constant journey on that. But thank you for sharing. That was really good.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any thoughts? No? Cool. I'll just do the last slide and then we'll open up for questions and things. So questions, everyone. Great. I've shared with you Varnas. Oh, sounds great. Brilliant. Yeah, really excited. But what do you feel in life today is an obstacle in pursuing your Dharma? What do you feel in life right now, in your situations right now, are stopping you from pursuing your Dharma? Anything? Any ideas? What do you feel makes it hard for people to even want to figure out, what their strengths are? Any thoughts? Malvika said, not completely knowing what I'm passionate about. Yeah, so, everyone's in a bit of a mix of so many things going on, so many people are successful, and therefore I'm not really sure what I should be passionate about. I'm not even sure how to figure it out, right? Hari B, you made a good point there actually, which was importance of money in society. Nitilam, expectations from other people, pressure from your peers, time, all completely correct. Yeah, society at the moment is governed, like I said, where someone who is in a famous position, earning lots of money, and is either a singer or an actor, is considered to be the elite of society and therefore very successful. And so therefore that parameter of success, like we mentioned before, is at that level. And when society is geared towards understanding that, all they think is I should be doing this. And if I'm not succeeding in that direction, I'm a failure. I watched I think last year or the year before on YouTube, there was this one advert, and I was watching I can't remember, some business video, and then the advert came, and this guy was like, "Oh, I think he was American," which explained a lot. No offense to any Americans on the call. He goes, "It's 2020, and if you're not the CEO of your own business, right, and if you're still employed and you're not self-employed, then you're a failure." Now, what kind of message is that actually portraying or giving to the masses of people? It's basically saying, if you're not the boss of your own company, and if you're still working for someone else, you've failed at life. You haven't met the parameter of success that is 2021 or 2020 in 2020. What about the Shudras of society who actually thrive in a position of support? Well, you've knocked them off the radar. What about the Vaishyas who need guidance and like to work for someone to make profit for them? You've knocked them off the radar. What about the Brahmanas who don't actually like to manage and lead, but they just like to advise? You've knocked them off the radar. Yeah. So what is generally communicated in today, whether it's social media or society in general, is not necessarily about people thriving in what they want to do, but it's often given an image of what success is, and everyone should follow that. If you don't follow that, essentially you're a failure. Yeah. So it's the lack of an ashram. An ashram is essentially the process one goes through in order to figure out their varna. So the point of the brahmacharya ashram as monastic life, young boys and young girls are functioning in an ashram so that their guru would identify what their varna is and therefore gear them towards that particular varna so they can excel further and further. Yeah? That was in the ideal society. Now we live in a very mixed society. So we take this as we can to make our lives a bit better experience. I'm going to stop there, and then maybe we can open up for any questions or thoughts. Rashesh Madhupur, nice to see you. I see you're in your scrubs.
Good to see you, Prabhu. It's been a long time.
Yes, been a while.
I'm at work, so that's why I had to have my camera on and off.
No problem, no problem.
But it's nice to see you.
Me too, definitely. Yeah, any thoughts or any questions from anyone or any reflections anyone want to share? Adi, I think you've got some questions, right, or something?
Yeah, I have some questions. So question one, you talked about struggle versus like just feeling, just like you're in your zone, sort of, you're in your flow. What to speak about like actually being stretched and it being a challenge, not out of frustration, but in a way so that you can improve yourself? Is that dharmic or outside of nature,
Yeah, so there is, like, for example, just because you're within your dharma doesn't make you like Iron Man and invincible. Everyone has a physical capacity, right? Everyone has varying capacities to which they can stretch themselves. But for someone who's in their dharma, they're more likely to happily and voluntarily accept the austerities and struggles that come across with pursuing their dharma. For example, for someone who's very much in their dharma with a particular business idea, let's say, okay? Let's forget that actually. Let's say someone's really, their dharma is to sing and they want to become a really recognizable singer, a very famous singer, and they love the art of singing. But as part of that sort of journey, they may have to go to lots of business meetings, sit on many boards and sit with managers, and that's probably not their dharma specifically. But because the ultimate cause of their activity is in line with their dharma, they're more happier to take on that austerity that comes with it. Yeah. And so therefore, when it comes to capacity, we're happier to be stretched, but we should also understand on an individual level what our limit is. When we're starting to feel disenthused, when we're starting to feel like physically run down and not able to give our 100% to activities, we need to learn when that is and try to identify that, and then take the necessary steps we need to just to make sure we're in that. There's like this stress curve. This is known in modern. There's a peak of stress where you're it's progressing, you're great, it's thriving, but there's an area of stress which is destructive, and it just becomes an exponential decrease of enthusiasm and energy. So that's a very individual thing in terms of capacity. But when you're in your dharma, you are willing to take bigger risks, increase more capacity as you start to slowly grow in confidence in your dharma. So one point that Sachinanda Maharaj made, which is so powerful, is when someone's confident in a dharma, they're secretly confident that whatever risks they do take will be a success. And what I mean by success, it's an internal success. Because just because you're in your dharma doesn't mean the material results of your activity are always going to be great. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Do you guys know what Formula One is? Like racing? Yeah, like racing. So a really good racing car driver, even if they get defeated, that actually enthuses them to try harder the next time. It doesn't disenthuse them or disempower them. Yeah. So therefore, they just feel like a greater need to actually go back. They feel enthused by that failure, as it were, because they're confident in the dharma. Rasha Shamadapur, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment to this point. I was going to comment on it before you had kind of gone into it. It was just that, people can know their dharma and their varna and still not be getting their, the results maybe they're looking for, or even, have success. And then there's people who have no idea what their, dharma or varna is, and they're getting huge results. And I think one factor that's, oftentimes not take into consideration is one's karma, right?
Yes.
The karma factor in the whole process, because it's ideally if one knows their dharma and and obviously has favorable winds going their way in life, then we could see people really thriving. But we shouldn't just see, even when people are struggling, that eventually all of us have to go through karma, and it's not always going to be positive. And I think that's a really important factor to consider, because it can really help us in reducing the comparison game that we're always that many of us are stuck in.
Definitely, yeah.
So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Pru. That's a really, really important point about karma. And again, like I mentioned before, don't build like some dream state just because you're functioning with the Dharma that you're going to be successful materially. We also have karma to play with, which actually leads me on to the point that now let's bring things down to reality. How did this synergize with our Krishna consciousness? Bhaktivedanta Thakur says we should be practicing Devi Varnashram, which means that we fulfill our Dharma and adopt various Dharma for the satisfaction of Vishnu. But as we advance in our spiritual life, our reliance of us acting within our Dharma doesn't become as important of a factor. We're able to transcend our dharmic limitations and pick up other forms of activity just because we are so absorbed and fulfilled by the pure act of serving Krishna and doing anything for him. Because Krishna's pure devotee does not say, oh, I'm a Brahmana, so therefore I shouldn't do Shudra activities. Sorry, Krishna, that's not going to please you. No, the pure devotee is ready to unconditionally do anything for Krishna because they're functioning on that platform. So ultimately, and that's also a trap people get into, is don't limit yourself by Dharma. Understand that we are practicing Krishna consciousness to be in a position where we can do anything for Krishna or attain that stage. It's a very advanced stage, but ultimately Krishna is Dharmaraj and pulls us through. The Vaishnava is above Varnashram situation, but we must learn to become Vaishnavas, which is quite a tall order.
Perfect, thank you. We were actually just discussing that principle over this weekend, actually at Raseshwar Madhav Prabhu's balcony. Just discussing that point. But yeah, I have a couple of questions here, so we'll get right into it. Next question is, how do you find clarity in what your calling is?
By experimenting, reflecting, then refining. Okay, so 3 steps, and I was going to share this with you, but I was happy to get into some questions. Is first of all, let's take things from a very base level in terms of activity and environment. If we experiment a lot, like Vishaka, you said, there's so many things you don't know what you want to do. Well, nothing's stopping you experimenting and trying, right? Don't let us feeling lost stop you from actually trying anything. So there are many activities, many situations you can openly and at no cost put yourselves in and experiment. Reflect on how that makes us feel. Reflect on how enthused we were. Were we good at it? What was the feedback from these activities? Yeah. And then have a conclusion, then go back to experimenting more, and then refine that initial understanding. Was I right in doing that? Was there something else that made me feel even more enthusiastic? Like Gaurangi, your example, that's why I wanted to come back to your example that you mentioned in the beginning. Gaurangi likes to teach, right? She likes to teach, but that could take many forms. She could be like a financial tutor. She could have been, a college lecturer. She could have been a corporate trainer. She could have, who knows? But where she feels her unique dharma or activity is within education, the academic situation, right? So children, and essentially you want to work up to teenagers and above. But she's refined it from education and teaching to academics, to children, and that sort of schooling environment. But someone else, if they experiment, reflect, and refine, could take a completely different circumstance. For me, I love to teach and share and talk and discuss things, but I can't do it with children. We have something called the Avanti School here, and kids for me are hard, like very difficult individuals, because it's a complete different psychology. And for me, it can be quite jarring because it becomes less about teaching and more about just making things exciting for them, right? But I find my dharma in a different angle, which is fine. But it's about taking those 3 steps and not feeling like, you can't do things which you wouldn't necessarily put your name to, because you may never know, they might be the very thing that actually excites you the most, but because you haven't been exposed to it due to the social setup of your situations, you're still lost. Yeah, does that help? So that's a very simple sort of thing you can do to reflection. Is nididhyasana is a very, very important part of our spiritual life, both in scripture as well as our lives. When we reflect more, we gain realization, and then we can test those realizations with Shastra. We can test those realizations with devotees and those who know us very well. And also another important point is ask your best friend, because we have perceptions of ourselves, but actually your best friend or someone who knows you very well actually knows a lot more about you than you know yourself, right? Because when people see things without attachment, when people see things from a bird's eye view, they can actually tell you a lot more about yourself than you can tell about yourself. One activity I did in the ashram was myself and 2 other devotees I was really good friends with, very close with. It was a couple of years in, and very good friends, and we always say good things about each other. But we got into a room once and we said, okay, let's lay it down on the table today. Everything you think you tell me. So we told each other everything we thought they were just completely rubbish at, really bad at, awful at. Lay it on the table. And we had this for a couple of hours just discussing this and letting it all out. And it was actually really, really nice because it was from a good place. And so therefore, a lot came out about me, and I told a lot about other people. And it was really reflective because we could see where we weren't so well, where we maybe thought we were doing good, actually. Like, for example, me, I'm a terrible manager, terrible at managing things. Someone else manage. You just tell me when I need to chip in. It's kind of like that. So yeah, I would use those 3 steps to compile it out.
Thank you so much. Okay, final question. Sometimes when your passion or what you want to do with your life, sometimes it's not sustainable or practical. For example, not being able to earn a sustainable living or being financially independent. So how do we go about reconciling our passion that may not be sustainable versus finding something that is more sustainable and practical, but maybe not our nature?
Yeah, really, really important question, really practical question. And this can be taken in a couple of ways. Now, it all depends on what kind of individual you are, okay? For some, you're happy to do a job which is, maybe not so much your dharma, but, it pays the bills and you can provide for the family, etc. And you're happy to do that. And you're happy to do your more dharmic activity as part of your service to Krishna on the weekends or whatever. And if that's you, then brilliant. Some of us may function that, actually, I have to make my dharmic activity the majority of my life because I just feel like I will crash otherwise. And I'm happy to do like a side thing just to make the money or whatever it may be. But I'm willing to sacrifice salary for the sake of doing something I love. Yeah. Now, what I would advise is for the common person, the reason I'm saying this, and take this how you want, there's no real right or wrong answer to this, but career in the modern day takes up the majority of our lives. You're lucky if you're doing 5 days a week, and you're definitely lucky if you're doing a 9-to-5 job, because I don't know if those exist anymore, right? But you're working loads of hours a day and it's taking up most of your life. If you can make that material situation a bit more bearable, even if you're not hitting that 80% dharmic role, what about 50%? And you tolerate the rest of the 50%. And then you do some other service activities which are more your dharma. So try and cater your life so that the majority of the activities are around your dharma. But again, do what you got to do to earn your money to live a practical and a meaningful life. Because we shouldn't forget the fact that as we become, as most of us will probably get married and etc., you have a duty and a grihasta dharma to protect your family, to provide for your family, do what you need to do to fill that dharma, right? So I guess my answer to that question is not so clear because the situation isn't clear. You have to find what works for you. How much are you willing to sacrifice, and therefore cater your life around that? What is the kind of lifestyle you're willing to live at in order for you to do X amount of dharma? Are you happy to take more of a simple, humble life and maybe have not so much expenses? Or do you feel you need to be doing your dharma, be doing a very difficult job just so you can provide for other things, and the rest of your time you can fulfill your dharma? So I don't really have a straight answer for that, just because it's very relevant for the individual, or very relative to the individual, what kind of lifestyle you're willing to take, and therefore making the decisions on that. But this is one conclusive thing. When you're in your dharma, yeah, or majority, again, when you're doing it properly, holistically, even financially, things will come your way, or lifestyle will present things in this way. And it may not just be money, right? It may not be money. Don't think of it as just money. Don't think of wealth as just money, but situation, products, things may come your way, or will come your way, which is a product of dharma, to help you facilitate your holistic life. Right? And again, when we have material desires, and when those material desires are very strong, it's a big factor in people going out of their dharma just to fulfill it. So there's many people I know in London who work as investment bankers, but it's completely ruining them. But they're doing it because the material desires are very strong. So they want to feed a particular activity, which is only gained by a particular salary, as it were, right? Which they do that, but this is where material desire has to be purified in Krishna consciousness, so we can settle for something lower in order for us to feel more fulfilled internally. But it's not a perfect answer, because this isn't a perfect world, and therefore there isn't a perfect situation. But we have to think about what we're willing to balance, and what we're willing to sacrifice to do that. Sorry, I don't think that's a very good answer, but that's the best I have.
Does anyone else have any thoughts or comments or questions that they'd like to bring up or share at this point?
Prabhu, I was just going to add, just in regards to this question that was asked, I think this balance also evolves as you kind of progress in your life too. So what you want maybe as a student is going to differ what's practical than when you're in the Grihastha ashram. And I also think, at least for me, it's evolving as I progress in my spiritual life too. So I think there's a huge progression in terms of, when we start doing some service, we're doing some type of work, but then we have, Krishna will kind of bring into our life this like calling that we need to, pursue. And it may not be the popular thing, and it may not be, what makes a lot of money, but we're really feeling a push because we, going back to the other question, I think we should enjoy it. And I think we should feel like we're, there's some competence. And then ultimately, if we can find if there's a need in society and it can serve Krishna, then, I think when those things come together, then I think it helps us to figure out, what we should be doing. So there should be alignment of a few things, but I just wanted to make that comment that I also feel that as we, get purified, the balance also shifts.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, that's really valuable.
Anyone else? Pranshu? I'm just calling on the people that I see. Vishaka, Hari, Gorangi, Tula. If you guys have anything to add. Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
I have a quick question. So what happens if you feel like your competence and what you enjoy are very different? So let's say like I feel like I'm good at a certain area, but it's boring and that's not what I want to do. But what gives me more enjoyment and what gets me going, I'm not so great at.
So you have to find out that first quadrant, which is the things that you're good at and the things that you like doing. So
Okay.
if you go back to that quadrant, it's you just pick the two diagonals. So one of them I'm good at doing, but you don't really like doing it. So you feel dissatisfied, right? Because it doesn't fulfill internally, it doesn't fulfill you internally. And there's things you're good at, there's things you like doing, but you're maybe not so good at it, but you're eager to develop. Yeah. So what we need in order to develop those activities is a bit of determination. But what you can do is, if you put a bit of determination to those activities, some of them you might find, actually, I'm actually really good at this. I just needed some training. Some you might find, I'm definitely not good at it, but I like doing it anyway. So what you want to try and focus on the activities which you're good at and that you love doing. And so in order to do that, we just need a bit of determination with the activities we're not good at, but we like doing. And then we can start to filter out those activities. But don't just, again, I'm a big believer in experimenting. Do things which wouldn't necessarily be presented to you. And that way you can really see things. You might be able to identify something which you love doing and you're good at. Because by the looks of things, everyone on this call is fairly young, and you've got time on your hands, and there's lots of free ways to actually experiment with certain elements. So start now, learn now, make mistakes now, because it will only help you set up yourself better for the future. So that's what I would say to that. Like things I love doing, which I'm completely terrible at, I've tried developing. I'm definitely not good at it, but I just do it anyway because I love doing it. It's fine, because sometimes we need to do things which aren't in competition. That's just generally for the sake of ourselves.
Perfect. Yeah, I personally also have tons of questions, but I just want to also be mindful for everyone's time. But thank you so much, Narasimha Nam Prabhu. It was so nice to see you after so many months. I think last time we saw each other was like November 2019.
Was it?
Yeah. That was the last time. Because that's the last time I came to the UK.
That was like years ago, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And then COVID happened. But yeah, thank you so much once again. And thank you all who were able to join this call. I know some of you have been on Zoom since this is your 4th hour on Zoom today. So thank you so much once again. And yeah, hopefully we can see each other soon. With the Sacred Space, some announcement, we'll just be taking a break for the summer. But when we do get back, we'll let everyone know. All right. The recording will be available on YouTube, so you can always go back and watch it. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.